Today we're going to assemble our Canon Optimum downrigger. We already have everything taken out of the box. If you missed our unboxing video, maybe go back and watch that. But everything we need to assemble this is here and a little extra, okay? So in the unboxing video, when I talked about the manual, also in the manual, there's a quick reference guide. It's got some great information on both sides. You definitely want to put this on the boat. This will get you up and running the quickest. And the great thing is it's got some type of coating on this, some type of laminate type coating, so it's not real paper, so if it gets wet, it's not going to get damaged on the boat. So we'll set our manual aside since we don't need that. And kind of just looking at some of the stuff we have here. Here's the power cord that gets attached on the boat side. Let me just touch on power and what you're going to do. Really read your installation manual, because the wire gauge that you use to go from the batteries or your battery switch to the downrigger is important. I will tell you, you're going to need a 30 amp inline fuse. You want to locate that as close to the batteries as possible. Even though these have a reset switch, it's imperative that you have that inline 30 amp fuse. Now, depending on the length of wire you have to run from the batteries to the unit, you may have to go up to as heavy as 6 gauge. On my boat, my runs are very short and I only need to run 10 gauge wire. But definitely don't use anything smaller than 10 gauge wire. So it's, you can buy like a 10-2, comes sheathed in one sheathing, so it's easy to run. But definitely make sure that you're following the instructions when it comes to wiring your downrigger into place, okay? All right, so I've broken down our parts bag, and I want to talk about a few things in here. So the first thing I'm going to point out is you're going to have a total of 10 screws, okay? Now, 4 of them are kind of a much more flatter pan head, and they're probably a couple inches long. Now, there's another screw there. It's the same length, but that screw is a true pan head. We're going to need that to assemble our Optimum downrigger. So I'm going to set this aside. These 4 screws are meant to attach your swivel base to the gunnel of your boat, okay? Now it's possible, given the type of boat that you have, these screws are going to be too long or not long enough. If these work for you, great. They're included in the package. But if you need longer screws, you're going to go buy 1/4 at whatever length you need for your installation. Also, with our parts and pieces, there are some flat washers. These flat washers are meant to go on the bottom side of your gunnel before you put your nylock nut on. So we don't need these right now for our assembly. So I'm going to put those back in the bag to take to the boat, okay? These 4 screws are shorter. Same panhead style head, but these are shorter. Now what this is for, this is to mount the base to the swivel, okay? So before you install this onto your boat, or once you get this installed on your boat, on your gunnel, you're gonna take your base, you're gonna put on there, and you're gonna screw that down to your swivel. Now the whole mechanism will swivel. You can put the boom out of the way when you're running, okay? So I'm going to slide this back on for now just because it helps with the stability of our assembly today. And I'll touch on this guy in installing a little bit later. But these 4 panhead screws, we don't need them for this assembly, so we're going to put those away. Our last screw is a very small Phillips head style self-starting screw. We need this to assemble this. So I'm going to set that aside for later. Then you'll notice in the package you're going to have some nylocks, and you're going to have one oddball nut. That one oddball nut that is not nylock, we need that for our assembly, so let's set that aside for now. We're going to need one of our nylock nuts for assembly of the downrigger. These 4 that are left over, those are for attaching your swivel base to your gunnel. So let's put these away for later. And we've got everything we need. Now you're going to need some tools to assemble this. Pretty simple tools. You're going to need a number 2 Phillips. You're going to need a number 3 Phillips. Okay. You're also going to need either a pair of needle nose pliers or some slip joint pliers for the assembly of our downrigger. You'll also need them later for rigging your Terminator kit at the end of this assembly. Okay, so we'll set those aside. One last thing that you need, it's not a tool, but it should be in every person's tool bag if you own a boat, and that is some anti-seize. I use Loctite silver grade anti-seize. Keep in mind, anytime we're putting a stainless steel screw into aluminum or a dissimilar metal, they don't like each other very much and corrosion can occur. So this anti-seize is really important for ensuring that you don't get some seized up parts on your downrigger, okay? And I'll show you specifically where we're going to use that. So we'll set that aside for right now. So let's jump into putting all this together. There's no right or wrong as to where you start, but I'll just show you how I do it. We'll go ahead and raise this up so that you can see this from the side. So I'm going to grab our boom here, and on the tapered end of our boom, the smallest end, there'll be a hole. On our pulley, you'll notice on the shaft here, there's a couple screw holes, and when you put this in and line it up, it will line up with one of those holes. That's there by design. So that small screw that has a little self-tapping, I'm going to start that in there. And then I'm going to use my number 2 Phillips, and I'm going to tighten that down. I wouldn't use an impact driver on this. You know, you're screwing into like a polymer type material, high impact, but still you can strip this out. So just in and nice and snug, okay? So that's done. And the next step is to install our boom onto the main unit. But before we do, I'm going to grab the collar. If you recall, in our unboxing video, I talked about the collar and the fact that this stainless hook can allow you to stow the ball, your cannonball, when you're running. So that non-threaded nut, I want to screw it onto this hook. We're going to screw that all the way down till it comes to a stop, okay? Now I'm going to use my anti-seize, and I'm just going to put a little bit of anti-seize on these threads. That'll do it. Because this stainless steel hook is going into this aluminum collar, and I don't want them to seize together. So I'm going to screw that in. I don't want to go all the way till threads are coming through the inside of the collar because I need to slide this onto the boom, okay? We're not going to tighten this down for now. We're just going to slide it onto the boom, okay? And we'll adjust the hook here in a little bit. Now we're getting ready to put our boom into the downrigger. So you'll notice in the larger portion of the boom here, we've got 3 holes. 2 of them line up. The bottom one does not go to anything, but it does in fact line up with these little nubs on the other part of our boom. We want that to be in the down position, okay? So we don't want to look at those. If we take our boom and just slide it in until it stops, okay, we're then going to take our Phillips head screw on the clutch side. We're going to go to put that in and just maybe a little adjustment, and that screw will get started and come through the other side. Okay, so we've got that in. Now I'm going to take a nylock, and on the back side here, there's a molded area for this nylock to rest in. So I don't need my slip joint pliers or my needle nose to hold this, because the unit is holding this nut in place as I screw this Phillips head down. Give it a pretty tight little squeeze. That's on there. Now, these hooks, you can position a little away from the unit, or I like to just have it resting right up next to the unit. So this hook position, I mentioned in the unboxing video, you can use it kind of like a fair lead. And what it does is it kind of helps track your wire onto the spool if it starts getting too heavy to one side. If you're fishing on the starboard side of your boat, you want that hook position to be toward the stern of the boat. You always want the hook to be toward the stern. So if we're on the starboard side of the boat, the hook is on the right side of the clutch side of the downrigger. If we are fishing on the port side of the boat, now we want our hook opening to be on the control head side of our downrigger. And then we're just going to use that nut to tighten down and hold that hook into place. So I've got that hook positioned. I'm going to set the downrigger on its side, and I'll do a final adjustment on this at the boat. Okay, so we're just going to get it pretty close. Okay, I'll grab my pliers. And just snug that down, okay? That's all we're doing right there. All right, so now we have everything together. The two things left is we need to run our wire, and we need to put our rod holder on. So with Optimum, you get one rod holder. If you want a second rod holder, you can buy it from Cannon. You can probably find it at your local Cannon dealer. So if you recall, in the package for these rod holders, there were a couple knobs, and they have a threaded shaft on there. Well, there were also a couple springs in that package. Those springs slide onto that threaded shaft of these knobs. And then you just want to line up your rod holder with the knuckle, get it started. You don't have to tighten everything down right away. Very universal. Once the knuckle is on the rod holder, you can mount it on the right or left side. It doesn't really matter. For today, I'll just mount it onto the right side of the downrigger. And then, of course, when you're at your boat, that's where you're going to fine tune it and get it into the position that you want when you're fishing. I don't use this rod holder. I use the Cannon dual axis rod holders for my boat. And I got to tell you, if you're looking to up your game in the realm of rod holders, high performance rod holders for controlled depth fishing, those rod holders are just amazing. So you might want to look into that. Okay, so we've got this on, and so now we need to run our cable. But before we do, I want to talk to you about, there's a couple holes here on the clutch side of the downrigger. And what that's for is for a product called Retro Ease. And honestly, I think it's not just convenient, but it allows you to operate in a very safe manner when you're on the water. And all the Retro Ease does is allows you that once you've brought the downrigger ball up to the surface of the water, or maybe even a little below the surface of the water, it allows you to safely retrieve that cannonball to the gunnel of the deck so that you can put your hand on it and then set it up here on the hook. You know, oftentimes guys aren't wearing their flotation devices, and I've seen guys fall in. And so I think the Retro Ease is a must-have. It's an accessory by Canon. I have one right here. Very simple to install. Long retrieval cord, very heavy duty. There is a right and a wrong way to put it on. The jam cleat side needs to be toward the rear. So we will line those holes up. Already pre-drilled, ready to go. All right, we get our number 2 Phillips. Snug that down, don't over tighten. Again, you're tightening into a high impact polymer, right? Nice and snug. Okay. So now this goes out to whatever length you need to be able to retrieve your downrigger balls. It's got a pulley in here. And when you get your Retro Ease, this will be assembled, but the screws will be out of it. That's in case you're putting it onto a downrigger that's already got a Terminator kit installed. That way you can pop it apart, get the pulley on the outside of the wire, put it all together, and you're ready to go. We don't have a Terminator kit on, so this is already ready to go. And now I just need to run my cable. Again, I want to caution you about this cable. It is very sharp, so we want to find the rubber band. Okay, what I like to do is just loosen this up a little bit. And down here on the bottom of the downrigger, there's an opening, and if you let that rubber band go, oftentimes your finger will capture it. I had it there. There we go. And the great thing about that is you just pull that cable right out. So here's our cable with the rubber band on there. We pull out as much as we need, tighten that down, take the rubber band off. Now we just want to thread the cable through our pulley. We want to take our Retro Ease and we want our cable to go through the Retro Ease so that it's between the tether and the pulley. That way when we pull, the pulley does its job, right? Okay, so that's on there. This downrigger is now ready for a Terminator kit. We'll do that in a separate video, so make sure that you watch that because we got some close-up video to hopefully help you learn how to rig the Terminator kit with no problem. Okay, so I need to touch on a couple of the things, especially for your installation. Let's just set this out of the way. Okay, so on your swivel base, when you go to mount this, a lot of people want to mount it in line with their gunnel, fore and aft. And what I'm talking about is they want to mount that because they want this handle to be near the gunnel. I would suggest you not do that. It makes it very difficult if you're rotating the downrigger fore or aft to get a hold of it. Because of the size of the downrigger body, what I'd suggest is take that handle and mount it facing you inside the gunnel so that when you grab, you can grab from the bottom and you're able to rotate your downrigger in any position that you need to. So think about that so that when you install, it's going to function for you very well when you're doing your controlled depth fishing. Last thing I want to touch on, and we touched on it briefly in the unboxing video, is the use of a transducer for the Optimum. So in order for Optimum to bottom track and do everything it needs to do, see fish, provide you the data that you need to have a transducer. So if you're running a brand of electronics other than Humminbird, then you need to buy that transducer, and the part number is right here for you. Exciting news for Humminbird users is on select Helix and all Solix models, with the new software update that's coming out here in spring of 2020, we will be able to operate our Optimum downriggers off of our electronics transducer. That means that you don't need that extra transducer anymore to run Optimum. That's exciting news, so be checking on the website at Humminbird.com for your software updates. If you haven't updated your Humminbird units lately, that's a must do. You need to get that done. And for more information on Cannon downriggers, specifically the Optimum, visit CannonDownriggers.com.